Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Luan Wise, and we're going to be talking about her book, Planning for. You got Snap.
Yes.
A practical guide to setting and achieving your social media marketing goals. I've read it and I really liked it. If you're thinking about doing social media and not quite sure what to do, it's a really, really good start. Which I think is which is the way that you book. But before we get into it and talk about it, Luan, where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you, Tim, for having me. It's good to catch up. You can find me on social media at Luan Wise, the spelling on the screen there. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X.
You are all over social media, aren't you?
Well, if you write about it, you kind of need to be, because you need to kind of try things out and see what's happening and test and watch and learn.
And where can we buy your book?
You can buy my book from Amazon. It is in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook format.
Fantastic. Is that your voice on the audio, or?
It is, yeah. I went to a studio last summer, found a great guy to support me, and spent 2 days in the studio reading my own words and being told to stick to my own script. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was enjoyable as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what was the motivation and the inspiration behind the book?
Okay, so I actually wrote my first book back in 2016, which was called Relax, It's Only Social Media. And I say I'm a big fan of books. I'm a big reader. That's my preferred learning choice. And Planning for Success was intended to be the second version of the book, which I originally thought would be, and you've done 2 versions of a book, Tim.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a few edits, take out things like Google Plus that had dated and add some updates in. But my intention when I decided that, it was time to do version 2 was 2020. Things started to change, how I was working, we all had to kind of adjust what we were doing. So it took me a bit longer to do the second version than I had originally planned, and also thought the original plan was quick edits, but it turned into something different, something very different, hence the change of title and change of focus in it as well.
Yeah, I know when I did my second book, I had to take out stuff like, what was it called? Not cred.
Clout.
Clout.
Yes.
Clout was in the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Which disappeared in 2018 because it didn't
Yes.
comply with GDPR.
Yeah. And even while I was writing it, I can't tell, you try and write a social media book knowing that you can't do a how-to because it would change too quickly, and that you want to write it in a way that won't date, but things change so quickly as well. And we don't need to go into how many times I had to change the section about X and what it was and how it was working and what the key features were.
Yeah, and we're recording this when Twitter is called X today.
Yes.
It could be called something else tomorrow. So
yes, absolutely.
In the book, one of the things that's really interesting that I really liked about was that you immediately said, because one of the things that we often see on LinkedIn is we see a post and actually it's opinion.
Yeah.
And actually you immediately open up in the book and say, this is actually based on data.
Yes.
So talk us through that, because I know that you do a lot with, is it Warwick University?
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So I think you're right. We see a lot of this on social media, and some people do go for opinion and some people are data led, and everything is everyone's own preference and how they like to work. I am someone that is very data driven. I like to go and look at trend reports. I like to look at research projects and things like that. And so when I sat down thinking about version 2 and what would that look like, I was having a cup of coffee with my friend at Warwick Business School, who then said, well, if you really want to, use data to back this up and, consolidate your thinking and get some evidence, why don't let's do some research. What are you thinking and how does this work? So it was her inspiration that said, let's do some research for the second version. So there was a research project in collaboration with Warwick Business School. Again, as I said, we started that in 2020. So by the time we'd been through internal proposals, ethics committees, sign off, etc., to get that done, it was March 2020. Was that the right time to put it out? Was it not? We decided to go ahead with it anyway. And then in hindsight, realized that actually we had a really good snapshot of data at a really pivotal point in time. Things went on, didn't get as much chance to work on the book in 2020 as I wanted, so kind of did park that as a project, came back to it in 2022 and decided with Warwick that we would repeat the research questionnaire in November 2022. So we had this original snapshot, the follow-up, and we did quantitative questionnaire and qual interviews as well. So it really just, I think it helped me consolidate my thinking, all the things that I read about and research reports, and then kind of question them as well. So that's the approach that I wanted to take, and I feel really good about doing that.
Because you call it, in the subtitle, it's a practical guide to setting and achieving your social media marketing goals. So how, because I mean, you know, as a social media expert like yourself, you could sit down and say, well, this is how you use Instagram, or this is how you use Facebook, or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you get that to marry in with the data?
Yeah.
In the book?
Yeah. So the data and the research was very much for me kind of almost trying to understand how people were feeling about social media. The audience were UK SMEs. So smaller businesses, that's who we were asking, people working in marketing. And the questions in there that appear in the book are things like, I know how to set the right objectives, agree, disagree, scale. I know how to measure return on investment. I know how to present my findings to the board. So it was all kind of like, I know how to versus which platforms do you use for this kind of question. So that almost gave the shape to the advice that I could then give in the book and where I took the book in terms of the content. And I think as much defining who the audience were for the book and the approach I wanted to take, my response to kind of the data findings, which to summarize in brief, were kind of like, I don't know how to align, or I do know how, it was quite split in a way. It wasn't really one extreme or the other, but there was obviously quite a mixture of people who didn't know how to do those things. Was you can't dive straight into here's how to do a reel or here's how to do a story. You need to take that step back and say, who is to the very beginning, what are my goals for doing this? Who is my audience? What am I trying to achieve? How am I going to, what does success look like? This is the way forward. So I tried to address taking that step back and going through all those kind of core marketing principles before diving into tactical.
Because that's one of the things that you cover, isn't it? Which is that it's all, I mean, I think some of us, what we want to do is just dive into social media and get on and do the stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas actually you talk about, actually there needs to be a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a kind of the start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And start with why. Why are you doing it? Do you really need to be on social media?
Yeah, because it's not always the right answer, and it's not always the only answer as well. And in terms of the strategy, it's very much about, is this aligned with your business and what you're trying to do overall as an organization and your marketing objectives? Social media is further down the line on that. And I think this comes from a place where we use social media in our personal lives first, most of the time. And so I see that the challenge in business, and you probably see this as well, Tim, in your work, is that people's perceptions of how they use Facebook personally or see their teenagers using TikTok impacts their thinking of what LinkedIn is for or what they do on Instagram for business. So it's really trying to marry up that the channel and the platform that people are kind of familiar with. It's free, it's easy to access, with why are you doing this for work? What do you need to achieve? What resources have you got available? And for me, there's often quite a bit of a haze around that and wanting to dive straight in.
You also you cover some of the different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
You also talk about, which I really like, was the fact that you explain that there's a on page 23 that there's a buying decision process. And by the way, whenever I always hate it when people get my book out and on page 43.
No, I've got it.
Because I actually don't remember. I know how the Rolling Stones felt, because I don't remember writing any of my books. So I don't know what it is. It's just maybe I was drunk at the time or something, But you do actually, you explain that this isn't just about pitching up on social media and basically saying, buy my product because we're great.
Yeah. I think, one I'd say, Tim, if you ever have to record an audiobook, you end up reading your own stuff again and again, and that makes you do it. And then you do kind of go, oh, did I write that? When did that come to me? That works. For me, I wanted, as I said, address those marketing fundamentals. And I think the thing about writing or any kind of teaching and training is that you sit down and you question yourself. You're kind of like, how do I do that? And why do I do that? And I've known this AIDA model for any marketers for like 20 years. How does that actually work in this world? And how am I going to explain it? So yeah, the chart on 23 is the AIDA model, the funnel. And I was trying to explain how you can use social media at each stage and what the task is at each stage as well. And I think if I come back to your thought about, what is social media for, and start with the end in mind, a big mistake I see is that people are trying to do everything in one post. And it's like, you can't do everything in one post. You can't do everything in one ad or one conversation yet. That basics of, is this awareness content, and do people know me when they're seeing this, or have I known this person for years and they're on the cusp of buying? We need to have that in mind when we're doing our work.
So you walk through 5 basic steps,
right?
Which are goals, audience, competition, content calendar, and measurement.
Yeah.
So talk us through a little bit about why we should set goals and how we do that.
Yeah, I think goals are that question of, why am I doing this? What is the business outcome and the purpose of doing this? And this is the difference between using social media for business versus using it in your social life and for fun and to stay up to date with friends and family. What is it going to help you achieve in your business? That would then help you align your resources. What are the right platforms? What is the content going to be? And then if you start with those goals in mind, then you'll know what success is going to look like and what you're measuring at the other end. Because if we jump straight to the other end, people will say, oh, here's my report, or what should I include in my report, and what are my KPIs? And if you've set the goals, you should know that answer, and that's what you're reporting on. And so that's kind of why there needs to be this start at the beginning and have those as threads running through everything that you do.
And I think it's always important, isn't it, to get those agreed at a senior level, because otherwise at some point 3 months down the road, people are going to say, so what have you been doing for the last 3 months? You say, well, put some stuff out on social media. And they say, oh, what did you get?
Yeah. And
did you want me to measure it?
And you need to set those goals in line with other people in your organization so that you talk their language when you're talking about what you've achieved and what you've done, and you're not talking the tactical level of, oh, I've done this post and it had 4 likes versus I did this one and we've got 10 new followers. That's not the high level reporting big picture that other people in an organization need to know about as well. So you've always got to talk in their language of achieving those goals.
So when we're in terms of thinking about the audience and what should we be looking for?
Yeah. So again, this comes back to the marketing fundamentals that I love around personas. And if I was to criticize many of the business books that I read, particularly around marketing a business, not yours, Tim, it's that it will say the sentence of like, focus on your target audience or have your target audience in mind. And then it will just carry on. And people will read that and just carry on. And if we haven't taken that time to go, so who is it on the other side of this screen? Who is it that's making the buying decision? And when you said about the buying decision unit in B2B in particular, this isn't just one person that's deciding to buy a new CRM system. One person has been asked to consider what's wrong with the current one. One's asked to go out and do some research. One's asked to do some demos. One's asked to sign off the budget. There's all these people involved. And if we don't know who they are and understand who they are and know what their pain points are, we are just kind of posting into the wind.
Yeah. And posting and hoping, isn't it?
Yeah. And so that sentence that I read in books of like, have your target audience in mind. I know so many people that will go, yeah, I know. And then you go, so who is it? And they might be able to say a job title. You're like, well, that's quite broad. How long have they been in that job? And, what are their pain points? What are they doing? What's the size of the organization? There's all these elements to it. And I think it's just brushed past too quickly. And I'm just such a fan of talking to people or following them online or trying to understand them, because you can't take those shortcuts in marketing early on, because then it will take you longer down the road when you're trying to get results. Spend that time on the detail up front. And
what about the competition? You talk about that.
Yeah. this is an interesting one of, competitor analysis, competitor audits, and it's something I love to do and provide. Some people say, I'm not interested in what others are doing. I'm going to stay in my own lane and focus on that. Some people probably go the other extreme and obsess about it and then don't want to do anything, and imposter syndrome and overwhelm. My approach is, you need to identify who your competitors are.
Yep.
Sometimes that isn't necessarily the people exactly like you and your organization. It's sometimes, what else competes for share of wallet or share of mind? What are the alternatives to what you do? For example, as a marketing consultant, very rarely would I say my competition is other consultants. It's probably my fees versus employing someone full time.
Yeah.
It's two different things. So I think you need to understand what context you're operating in, because also your customers aren't just scrolling and seeing your posts. They're seeing other people's posts above and below, and coming in from different angles and things like that. So it's about understanding context. It's also given you a benchmark, which I know if you're ever trying to report anything internally, you will always get asked, but what are they doing? And it's not about saying that your competitors are doing things better than you. It's given you a comparison, but it also gives you ideas. It gives you inspiration. If you look at the data that's available, you can see what people engage with and what they respond to. If I had a choice, I would spend so much more time than I have available in comments, seeing what people like, dislike, and learn from. So for me, it's about insights, and it kind of brings it back to social media is about far more than writing a post. In the preparation and the planning and the day-to-day, I think people think doing social media is, I've done a post today, and it's all
you've done a post today. Oh, great, we can all go home.
Yeah, exactly. Tick. Yeah.
So what about the content calendar?
Yeah, I think this comes from the approach. The book is about planning, and I'm a planner and always have been. When you talk about this topic with people, you get the very tactical questions like, what hashtag should I use? What time should I post? How many posts a day should I do? And there is best practices around that, and you'll always find trend reports and research on what to do. But my response to that is always, I try to be quite pragmatic and say, do it in line with your own resources. What can you achieve with what you've got? Can you be consistent? I'd much rather someone shows up every Tuesday morning forever than shows up every single day for 3 weeks and then runs out of steam and disappears again. So for me, a content calendar, and almost again that kind of planning out what you're going to post and where you're going to post it and what platform, it allows you to separate the thinking from the doing, so that almost you're not having to every day go, oh, what am I going to post? What am I going to post? I literally not got it to hand. I go online and I find one of these free monthly calendars, PDFs, and I download it and I print it out. And I start off by going through my calendar and seeing what I'm doing. Is there events I need to talk about? Am I going to be somewhere that day that I could take a photo of and talk about? Then I think, oh, is there any, big industry events happening that week or awareness days that I could do? And, honestly, within 20 minutes, I've probably filled up a month and gone, well, I've got 3 posts a week. That's going to have me showing up, meet my objectives of letting people know what I do, what I work on, who I work with. So it's not a big task, but it means, when I wake up on a Monday morning, I know what I've got to do. I haven't got to think about it.
And I think that's great counsel, Luan, in terms of because of what happens is you keep, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Rather, what today you're going to be talking about this industry event. So you've moved the thought. Well, I'll just go in there and I'm going to take a picture of me. Here's me signing in. Right, done.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than you worrying about what you're going to do.
And then it becomes just storytelling and a narrative.
Yes.
And it's not which again, I know is your approach of like social selling. It's like, just keep talking and showing people what you're doing. I'm not ever having to, I have written a book and big content. I'm not having to create big pieces every day. I'm just literally saying, I was here last week and this is who, I had a brilliant Friday afternoon doing this and, a little bit around it. It's then just part of your working day rather than this big chore, which I think many people think it is.
And finally, measurement.
Yes. Again, back to goals. if you know what you want to measure, measure those goals. For me, there is so much data in social media, in the platforms, in third-party tools. I could create you charts and charts and charts. I focus on a couple of things. One is, if I see the data, do I know what to do with it? Like, if I don't really understand the data, there's a learning exercise. But once I understand the data, do I know what to do with it? What is it telling me to do? Or what is it telling me about the performance of something? And then I look at the data and I want something actionable out of it. So I want to know then, what am I going to start doing, potentially in context of other things? What am I going to stop doing because maybe it didn't resonate as well as I thought it would? And what am I going to keep doing? And I just use those as my benchmarks of, what does the data tell me I should be doing next? How can I report on performance? And then stop, start, continue. And I find that more simple framework helps me, but it also helps to communicate that to other people, because again, you can tie it back to their language and not get into those nitty-gritty follower numbers and likes and individual posts. Only you need to know that and learn from it.
Luan, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book.
Thank you.
Planning for Success, a practical guide to setting and achieving your social media marketing goals. I've read it, and as I said, if you are new starting out in social media, or you're a small business, you're trying to do something with social media and it's not working, it is a really, really practical guide. And I think it's going to be one of those where people are going to sit with it by the desk and then thumb through it and then, I've just been asked this at the book, what do I need to do? That sort of thing.
Yeah,
I really
thank you. There is online tools as well. So if you've got the book and then want to kind of almost work through it chapter by chapter, there's then templates that you can log in and then fill in the plan as you go.
And we can get it on Amazon, can't we?
Yeah, all on Amazon.
And we can find you on every single social media platform that was ever invented. Well,
a few, but having a unique name makes it easier to get your handles and get found online as well. So it is.
Yes, unfortunately, there's a Christian rock star called Tim Hughes. So
not quite so easy.
It's no. Luan, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.